Everyone, welcome to this special edition episode of Burnout Banter. It is our horror stories edition. My name is Rachelle Ray,
And I'm Jeff.
and this is Burnout Banter on Spotify, Amazon, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen so that you can stay up to date with the latest banter. So, before we get started, what we did for this episode is we put out a call to our listeners and asked you to submit your burnout horror stories. And we're going to read a few of them right now. And man, I can say that these are terrifying listener tales. So
Definitely
Jeff, I don't know if
nightmare.
you have anything to add in, but
Definitely nightmare inducing.
yeah, these are nightmare fuel. Some of them hurt, and some of them are beautifully written. Like, y'all understood the assignment. This is amazing.
I told Rochelle it was very obvious that we had marketers contribute to our stories because they are extremely well written. Uh, lots of painting of the picture.
The scene setting, the creeping down your spine, the goosebumps on your skin, they're here. It's amazing. Again, these are all anonymous, so we're not going to out anybody who submitted a story to us. But if you're listening, we appreciate you. We hope that you are out of the dark and scary woods in your burnout. And
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 if you're
yeah,
not, we're here for you.
we are always here for you. Our inbox is always open. So, are
So
you ready?
shall we toast our pumpkin spiced drinks and get started? Turn on the fire.
Absolutely. Turn on the fire, turn down the lights, light
I
a
would say I could
candle.
look at some changing leaves, but we haven't dipped below 80 degrees here, so the leaves are holding strong, and we don't need a fire.
Same here. Same here. We've got the candle going. I always have a candle on my desk, so ambiance is set. We are ready. All right. So our first story. It started just like any other. The company expected certain projects to drop, and they didn't. So, to make up the difference, they shifted goals to company divisions that had more in the pipeline, and to meet new quotas, these divisions started throwing paper at the wall and hoping anything would stick. Yikes. With three proposal coordinators for a fairly large firm, we were each saddled with 3, 4, 5 proposals at once with no end in sight. This was then compounded by a division where the project team had zero accountability and stopped adhering to deadlines or communicating. We'd bring complaints to our manager, who said they'd handle it, but never did. As the lead proposal coordinator, I took the brunt handling federal, state, collegiate, and municipal proposals that included many complex forms and coordination. The typical turnaround leeway for these types of projects were 10 days minimum, and the RFQPs were released with plenty of time to allow that. When I had a 3-day turnaround to turn in 2 state SF330s with zero support from the division lead, I had enough and escalated the complaints to my boss's boss. Less than 2 weeks later, I was called into HR and the company was restructuring the team and my position had been eliminated. This was even though we were busier than ever and my win-loss was more than double the company's. I found out later that pressure because of bad relationships, heavy workloads, a horrible company win-loss ratio, and the mishandling of a couple of other marketing initiatives was mounting on my boss, and they decided to throw me under the bus instead. In retrospect, it was the best thing to ever happen to me. It got me out of an extremely toxic environment, so toxic, in fact, that I'm still finding pieces of the story. It took months to recover, to feel like myself again, to feel like I had value again, and I'm more mad at myself for 2 things. Being so blind to the poor culture that cultivated the situation, and not seeing it coming, and letting them dictate my view of myself in such a negative way for so long. There are others from this company that have worse experiences, and I truly hurt for them. But almost all of those stories, too, have a happier ending than if they'd stayed with the company, and that makes my heart happy. Moral of the story is don't let company culture, that's in quotes, bind you, and if you can't speak up to defend yourself without fear of retribution, then start updating that resume and find a better fit. This is wild to me. I can't imagine 3 days to turn into SF330s.
How long,
Jeff, do you know
for
what an
those of us who don't
SF330
know,
is?
how long does that typically take?
Okay, so an SF330 is a beautiful government form that is
Uh-huh.
sections A through I with a second part. And these could be anywhere from like 20 pages to 500. The biggest SF330 I've ever put together was four 2-inch binders full, or 3-inch binders. I'm sorry. I still have nightmares about that thing. So SF330s at a minimum take 2 weeks just to like wrap your head around, especially if they're state level. If they're federal level, it's months to do these things. There is no way a sane person, even with nothing else on their plate, can do this in 3 days.
Yeah.
That is wild, wild to me. It's just imagine filling out a government form and then multiply that times 1,000, and then you've got an SF330.
Well,
That's crazy.
I appreciated that she handled federal, state, collegiate, and municipal proposals. No big deal there, right?
Right. Also, don't know.
Oh,
She
yeah, don't know.
didn't say.
You're
I legitimately don't know on this one. Um, but I'm not going to assume all marketing coordinators are women. So yeah, no, to not specialize. Usually you see like state, local education or federal. It's very rare that you get someone handling both. So this tells me this is maybe a smaller firm, except they do say fairly large firm. So this is a hot mess to me.
it
But
really
I
is.
also go ahead.
Well, I was, when projects didn't happen, now the panic sets in, right? And you just start throwing everything against the wall to see what sticks.
The spaghetti method, yes.
That's a great approach to trying to win work.
That's when you know you're in trouble. When we're not being strategic and we're just chasing anything that, yeah, that's a red flag exit. But I wanted to the person who submitted this, I hope they're listening. Uh, they mentioned being mad at themselves for how they like handled the situation or didn't handle it. And I just wanted to say that it's really hard sometimes for us when we're in these situations to see them for what they are because we go into survival mode, right? Like you're just trying to get through it. You are doing everything you can to knock those SF330s out, get through it, and then you'll deal with it later. And even afterward, you're still dealing with the dealing with it, like the recovering, the trying to sleep and take care of yourself and get back to normal. So I wouldn't beat yourself up about that or anybody who's like in kind of this burnout mess. Survival mode is meant to protect us, and not seeing it coming or not seeing how you got into it is totally normal. It's when we realize where we are and we start making decisions on how to get out of it or how to manage it moving forward that matters.
Yeah, I mean, I think you know, my guess would be is that the anger comes from the outcome of the situation, right? That it ended up costing them their job. Um, I would ask them if they're proud of the way that they acted, right? If you felt like you had no other choice and you went to the boss's boss and tried to stick up for yourself, right? Even if that didn't turn out the way that you wanted it to, um, you know, are you happy with the way with yourself and the fact that you stood up for yourself in that tough situation? Because that takes a lot of courage. And even if it doesn't go your way, don't set aside the fact that that took a lot of courage to do. And it will
Absolutely.
benefit you going forward, right? The fact that you could do that.
Absolutely. I will be the first to admit that I would not have done that. I would have just been out skis. I would have put in my notice and been like, I'm done. But this person tried. They tried to fix the situation. They tried to draw attention to it. So
It's
they
also
did
hard.
everything we tell people to do.
It's hard to leave too, or just be out if you don't have somewhere else to go, or depending on what their situation is, family
That's true.
or so sometimes you do feel stuck in a situation that isn't good just because you don't see other options.
That's true. That's
But
true. I say I would be out, but who
yeah,
knows?
if there is still anger, my recommendation would be to write yourself a letter forgiving yourself. And then at the end, at the end, tear the letter out, burn it, throw it away, shred it, whatever you want to do to just kind of let that go. And if the idea of doing that seems intimidating, I always like to tell people to set a timer for like 15 minutes and just see what happens, right? Because then you have a built-in out. And if you're really, into it, then you can negotiate more time for yourself. But
I love that. I love that. I wrote a breakup letter to one of my old roles once, and it was very therapeutic.
yeah,
All the things I wish I'd said when I was in that role, and then let it go. Are we
yeah, I
ready for
think
our
that
next
the idea
story?
of company culture being, companies saying one thing and then, acting in a different fashion, right? Just like with kids, we pay a lot more attention. The kids pay a lot more attention to what we do than what we say. So
Yes.
uh, I agree. Not, if a company says they're one thing and they don't live up to that, then yeah, I think that's a concern or a red flag.
Right. Right. That's human nature. We say one thing, do another, and we pay attention to one of those things or the other.
Yeah. Well, are we ready for the next story?
Let's do it.
In December of 2020, I was a GovCom proposal manager and started to have really severe headaches. I was always tired after work and honestly barely able to function. I was constantly stressed, but never attributed the headaches to the stress because they were constant. My neurologist diagnosed me with a rare neurological condition that required me to be on a dangerous medication. I had to take a leave of absence from work because the pain was so bad that I couldn't look at a computer for any length of time. My place of work at the time was requiring me to allow them to speak to my doctor about my leave of absence, and a written letter was not good enough. Overbearing does not even begin to describe it. I was eventually laid off from that job after submitting a proposal that had a ceiling of tens of billions of dollars right after I had purchased a house with my husband. It was a blessing in disguise. However, after continuing to be constantly sick, I started to question whether my medication was actually helping me or hurting me. It got to the point that I even applied for disability benefits. I started going to a new doctor, and we determined that I was misdiagnosed with a neurological disorder and that I was having severe cluster headaches and migraines from that job. Ever since being taken off the medication that I later learned I was actually allergic to, and getting away from that job, my headaches have stopped and I can live a normal life again.
I simultaneously have so many bad words that I want to say about this and also no words at all. This one is painful, and I'm so, so glad this person is out of that job, hopefully far away from that neurologist and living a normal life.
Yeah, it's our body's attempt to protect us can show up in a lot of different ways, right? If you continue to try to push through a really bad situation like that, um,
Right.
our body's going to try to get us to stop in some way or another. Um, and I think that's where you see a lot of really bad health side effects from people who work in this industry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can't get over the work not accepting a note from the doctor. Like what did they want to do? Go consult with the doctor, have them come in and explain like what was going on? What
Yeah,
that
and
is
what's the
wild
level of
to me.
distrust, right? That you don't trust why don't you trust what your employee's saying?
Right? Like why would you think that they would make this up? I that's just I can't. I can't. I'm so mad at that piece. So mad at that. Especially this person is a billion-dollar proposal writer. Billion dollars, someone you trust enough to submit a proposal with a ceiling of tens of billions of dollars. You trust them enough to win that much work for your company, but you don't trust them with their own health? What? What? Ugh.
That is a nice thing here in Colorado. they, I think a few years ago, passed to make Family Medical Leave Act paid benefit. So companies contribute to this fund that allows people then to take paid family leave for whatever reason, right? It could be this, the health situation. It could be something happened to somebody in your family, or even for, maternity, paternity leave, things like that. But
Um,
it's nice that your pay is covered, at least to 60%. I think it depends on the insurance company, but and
that's nice.
your job is guaranteed for the 12 weeks that you're off,
Oh my
which it
gosh.
sounds like this person would have benefited from greatly. I don't know if
Yes.
12 weeks would have been enough, because it sounds like it was pretty bad, but
God, can you imagine how scary that would be too? To be someone's telling you that you have a rare condition and you're like grappling with the trauma of that while also trying to manage your insane toxic workplace.
and
Like,
not having them believe you that you're dealing with that.
yes. Oh,
I do think, uh, gosh, it's probably been almost 15 years ago, but I started at a new company and took over a project, and um, it needed so much work done in like a 6 or 8 week period that I was pretty much doing that nonstop.
oh my
And
gosh.
got to the point where my kids at the time had hand, foot, and mouth disease, and I ended up with the same virus that goes into the lining of your heart and creates pericarditis. And like I couldn't lay down, I couldn't do anything. The medicines they kept trying, I was allergic to.
Oh my
And so it
gosh.
took forever to find, like just night sweats, soaking through sheets. Luckily, at the time, my dog had had ACL surgery, so he and I hung out on the couch every night trying to get some sleep. But yeah, my body was telling me that was too much, and it knocked me out for about 2 months.
I, oh, wow. Dang.
I think the moral from this story, right, is to listen to our body when it's telling us something.
Yes.
It's probably smarter than we are. And even just creating time or space to listen to your body, right, to check in every so often and see how you're doing. I know yesterday I think was World Mental Health Day, but
Right.
to create time to check in with yourself and just see how you're doing.
Absolutely. I think that's something we don't do enough. Wow.
And I think just, if you are having an experience like this, you know, maybe your company doesn't want to hear it, but is there anybody else you could talk to just to kind of help you see that that's not normal, what they're asking you to do? Or I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, even if you recognize it, having someone to validate that, yes, you are right, this is not okay, uh, can be really helpful.
Yeah, that
Okay.
one's scary because that one, uh, you know, none of this is worth risking your life over for sure.
No, your health is not worth it. Your life is not worth your job,
And it would be interesting to,
or your job is not worth your life.
they're saying,
I
right,
did that backwards.
they ended up on disability, and, it would be interesting to see how long it took them to come back from that, right? We think that we
Right?
can just push through and be fine, but it could be months or years that you're dealing with the blowback from having put your body through that.
Absolutely. I think we also think that this stuff just happens like overnight. We're doing fine, and then we lose it. And it's not true. It's just that we're the frog in the pot, right? Like slowly turning up the heat until we get to boiling. And because it's been gradual, we don't realize it until suddenly we're boiling. And like it's the same thing. You slowly ramp up and you have to slowly come back down and level out and be normal again. And recovery, unfortunately, takes a lot longer than snapping or damage.
Well, yes and no. I think the damage takes a long time to develop too. We're just not aware of it. But then
Right.
when we are damaged, it's hard to pull ourselves out of it, and we're a lot more aware of it. But I don't think we get to this point overnight, right? It's not like one thing happens and we're there. It's a progressive thing that happens over time. We're just not paying attention to it.
Right. We're remarkably resilient things
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
humans.
Until the pain gets so bad that we're willing to put up with a lot until the pain is so bad that we can't tolerate it anymore, and then we make a change. But we put up
Right.
with a lot of pain along the way.
We do. We do. And we don't need to.
No.
No. Are we ready for the next one? I
Yeah.
think if I keep mulling over this one, I'm gonna just keep getting angrier.
Have a drink of your pumpkin spice.
I know. Ugh, okay.
Think happy thoughts.
Happy thoughts, spooky thoughts, but not proposal horror story. Okay. So our next story. I was just a new marketing coordinator, fresh in my career, and I'd landed my dream job. Or so I thought. A company that claimed to care about its people, had a beautiful portfolio, and tons of marketing resources for me to play with. It was everything I'd wanted. But even paradise has shadows. My goodness, y'all.
I love that. That's fantastic.
Y'all are great. Day one should have been a clue. It was a 10-hour day that passed in a blur, filled with handshakes and smiles and an emergency calls pack I had no business putting together. It only got worse from there. Marketing coordinator, here's an important proposal, they would say. Then hand me another and another. Marketing coordinator, we have an important conference. Coordinate the swag, the banners, the brochures, the shipping. Marketing coordinator, you need to take ownership of something. Champion a process for us. Document it. Teach the team, and then oversee its implementation. I went with it at first. Eager to please, I was learning so much after all, growing in my role, networking, and feeling useful. The workload swelled, but the smiles around me faded. Marketing coordinator, here is another proposal. It is very important. Do not drop the ball, but also do not drop any of the other balls. I could handle it, right? I started working late, staying at the office well into the evenings, and taking my computer home with me at night. I was the first one in, hours before rush hour would even start, using those quiet hours to get as much done as possible. The worst part, I was finishing my last year of college. Almost a year into my new job, I realized I needed to make a change or I wouldn't graduate. I asked for help prioritizing tasks to fit my workload in a 40-hour week. I desperately waited for someone to realize I was drowning. Marketing coordinator, they said. Why can't you do your job? Why aren't you being a team player? One night, well past 10, I dragged myself through the door of my empty apartment. No food, no clean dishes, just a lone mug and vanilla ice cream in the freezer. I sat on the cold kitchen floor, eating ice cream from that mug. That night, I realized how lost I'd become. The day after that ice cream dinner, I put in my notice. I left, I graduated, and sometimes I still look back and think, how? How did I let it get to that point? Ooh, marketing coordinator.
The ice cream dinner is a very vivid image.
I've been there. I've been there. I feel you, marketing coordinator. You know, groceries sometimes get forgotten. Thank goodness for DoorDash and Uber Eats. But yikes. And it's the same theme that, like, how did I get here? How did I let that happen? It's the same thing from the first story. Like, it wasn't your fault. It was that slow, you can see it in the progression. Like, marketing coordinator, here's this, and this, and now this, and this.
Well,
So it was,
do you think that sometimes our the fact that we can handle all those things sets us up to take on more, or people think we can take on more. Um, and I'm not saying that that's their fault, but when we shine in a job, uh, I think people like that.
It's the
And
rewarding good work with more work. Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, it sounds like that's what's happening here. It also sounds like there's a little bit of an element of maybe some people pleasing.
yes.
If you get your dream job and you want to do a really good job, you're probably really excited and thinking like taking on all these things was a good thing. Like they trust me with this, I get to do this. And once you've said yes once, it's really hard to go back and say, actually, I can't do that, or I shouldn't be doing that. That's not my job.
Yeah, but I see a lot of courage in this one too. Asking for help prioritizing things, realizing, right, that help wasn't going to come and deciding that a change needed to be made, to prioritize themselves over the job and make sure they graduated and do the important things.
Kind of the same theme again from that first one that like there was that moment of enough is enough. Something needs to change. And when that didn't happen, then it was time to go.
Yeah,
I
the
kind of,
sitting on the floor eating ice cream was their high pain tolerance moment, right?
right? I mean,
The pain has become too much.
I can remember sitting in the office once submitting, I think I was working on an award submittal, but it was like 11 or 12. I don't know. I was in America and I was submitting a award submittal in Europe. And so it was on their deadline. So it was like 2 p.m. their time. So way late our time. Uh, and there was just like a little tin of almonds on my desk because someone had realized like Rochelle maybe hadn't been eating as much as she should have that week. I'm allergic to almonds.
Oh no.
But I ate those darn almonds in that moment. And
You did?
that probably should have been I was starving, Jeff. And I had to get this thing done. I had a submission deadline. I couldn't pause and go get dinner. So,
Not very dangerous, Rochelle.
I mean, I'm not like deathly allergic, just mildly uncomfortable. It was worth it.
I thought maybe you ate the almonds on purpose. Like maybe this will get it to end.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. That would have been a horror story. No, no, I appreciated the gesture of the almonds, but
How many times when that happened were you there by yourself, do you think?
almost every single time. No one ever stayed late with me unless they were already like it was another marketing person also working on their own deadline. But like the person whose project I was submitting the award for, they weren't there. Like the person who asked me to submit this award that they had randomly found online, they were not there. Same thing with proposals, like the technical lead who should be working on this thing and who gave me their edits at 5 p.m. instead of the day before like they were supposed to. They walked out the door at 5 p.m. and left me sitting there in the evening with my little tin of almonds
I think
working
that's
on that proposal.
Yeah, I mean that can be another red flag to look for, right? Too, is that I think in a supportive environment or culture, the people who are either asking you to do that or involved in that are there with you. I know even in my career, like I don't do Revit, so I'm not super helpful to people who are crunching on a deadline. But I've sat there with them. I remember one time in Houston, we were at the office from 5 in the morning until like 2 or 3 in the morning the next
Oh my
day, and we did that
gosh.
for a week straight. And there was times where I didn't have a lot to do, but I was there the whole time with them and made sure like if I need to run and get dinner, right? Like I'll go run and get dinner for everybody, but just trying to take care of the team and make sure they have what they need.
That's amazing.
Or to like back.
That would mean everything.
Yeah. I think that makes a big difference. So as leaders, a takeaway from this might be if you're asking people to stay late or do things above and beyond, be there with them.
Yes. I know, Amari, I've had this conversation with the marketer. I won't out her, but she knows who she is. And she said that as she grew in her roles, one of the things that she would ask was for those technical team members, if they did that to her, that they would stay. And she would just say it like, I'm gonna have to work late today. You're gonna stay with me, just so they could see how disruptive it was. And that always blew my mind, one, because it was extremely brave and total power move. But also, yeah, kind of like a hey, this is not okay, and here's why, and you're going to experience why. So
I also think as a leader, um, if you have to ask me to stay, I mean, to me, that kind of takes away some of the impact that staying could have.
I agree. Like, I would much rather leadership look at the situation and be like, okay, how can I support this? How can I fix this? How can I make sure it doesn't happen again?
Yeah.
Uh, but I think there's sometimes that element of like people don't know, like our architects and engineers don't always know what we do. They don't, it's the unseen work, right? When they're not with us, they don't see what we're doing. And so they just assume this magic happens and this proposal document is just like we snap our fingers and it's beautiful all of a sudden.
That's more
Kind of
Christmas magic than Halloween.
Christmas, right? I don't know. Some people tell me it's black magic that I do over there in
Okay,
the
black
corner,
magic.
but but we've had this conversation. Like you didn't know that when you give marketing your narrative, like we go through and we edit it and make sure like the voice matches the rest of the proposal and everything, like your references, the way you're talking about the project or whatever matches how we're supposed to be referring to things. And I think because so many people don't realize that, so many leaders and so many technical staff don't know that that happens, that the way that marketer handled things and said, you're staying with me so you can see it, was like an educational moment. If that leader then continued to be a jerk and not show up, then yeah, not cool. But if they then started staying, I would see it as just as valuable because they learned what is happening on the other side.
Yeah, and meals are a huge part of it too, right? Because if you are working that hard, odds are you're potentially skipping meals, and that's not good for anybody. So even at a minimum, provide some food.
Food your people are not allergic to.
Yeah, I mean, it helps if you know that your people are allergic to almonds, sure.
To be fair, I don't think the person who gave them to me knew that, so I'm not going to fault him, and I've never called him out on it. I'm always very appreciative of those almonds. But yeah, food would be great. I went like an entire year of one of my career choices surviving on venti chais and whatever breakfast sandwich the guys I made friends with at Starbucks would hand me across the counter when they found out that that was my lunch. I would get like bread, banana bread, a cookie, because they felt so bad that I was not eating.
Yeah,
It was
it's
not
an easy thing
cool.
to do, but it's about the worst thing we can do is to skip meals.
It's terrible. And it's one of my like indicators that I'm burning out is because I stopped cooking and I stopped caring about food. So I've at least clocked that as a hey, you
I
need to
don't ever
start paying
get to the point
attention.
where I stop caring about food.
You what?
I don't think I ever get to the point where I stop caring about food.
I don't know if it's that I stopped caring, but it's like it gets knocked down the priority list.
Uh,
Like you
yeah,
work late and all of a sudden you're like, oh, it's 7 and I haven't stopped to eat. I'll just grab whatever's in the kitchen and then come back.
no, not I don't do that.
Good for
Even
you. It's not healthy.
even I've gone on some trips with like architects, and we we fly somewhere and then they want to go straight to the site or something, and I'm like, I gotta eat. Y'all are magical and you don't eat all day. I don't know how you do it, but I need to eat, or I'm gonna get real grouchy.
This is why I like traveling to conferences when we meet up. It's the first thing you always say when we get there is have
Where
you
are we
eaten?
eating?
And I'm always like, no. I'm a magical marketing unicorn that survives off of stress and the universe vibes, I guess.
Yes. All right, ready for our last story?
I'm ready.
All right, the leaves outside turned colors as the wind blew them off thinning trees. A whirlwind of reds, oranges, and yellows adorned the sidewalk. It was only late September, but the spooky season was fast approaching in a storm of pumpkin spice, soft, oversized cardigans, and humid fog. For this proposal team, however, the scariest thing about October was not Halloween. It was the impending doom of massive federal proposal deadlines. There seems to be a common theme with federal proposal deadlines, I think.
I'm shocked. Federal proposals are so easy. Why would anybody be afraid of them? Sarcasm.
Instead of enjoying the cozy season curled up indoors with fuzzy socks and hot drinks, the proposal team spent evenings hunched over their desks, clocking in several late nights at the office in the attempt to manage such an undertaking. A team that had never completed a federal submission in their short lived existence was suddenly left with no choice but to lead on a federal project, a realization that everyone had come to only weeks before it was due. Within the span of 1 month, the proposal team spent half of their dwindling time coordinating responses from over 10 subcontractors, and the other half trying to navigate how the heck federal proposals worked, which I think takes a lot longer than a month to learn.
I this I have thoughts. This should have been no go. I don't understand how it got through, but whew.
So the company executives sent firm-wide announcements requesting PMs prioritize the information necessary to get the federal submission out. The proposal team juggled information between their own staff and proposal consultants, seeking the necessary guidance to decipher the maze of federal submission guidelines. One overwhelmed PM berated a proposal team assistant, dismissing their request for project information in favor of the, quote, real work they had to attend to. Witness to their dedicated efforts was the Uber Eats driver, who delivered their dinner several days in a row in the last week leading up to D-Day. After completing an entire project approach on the day preceding the deadline, the submission portal took another 2 hours to decipher. With the clock ticking and the proposal team eager to end their all-nighter, they only just managed to properly upload the submission minutes before the verge of exhaustive collapse. Fielding several calls from concerned families awaiting their arrival home, the proposal team left the office at 6 a.m. on the day the submission was due. They drove home as bright yellow school buses marred the pink-hued skyline. Students gathered at their bus stops dreadingly. That, declared the fatigued proposal assistant as they fumbled with their keys to make their way through the front door of the house, was horrific. Minutes later, everything went to black as they succumbed to the sweet nothingness of a dreamless sleep. They're lucky it was dreamless at that point.
I
I would have guessed it was filled with nightmares.
I yes, I told you at the top of the episode I still have nightmares about my worst federal proposal, and that was 10 years ago. This proposal assistant, oh my gosh. One, I have to point, this is my favorite story because the writing is absolutely beautiful. I can like feel the crisp fall air. I can feel the like franticness of the office. I just wanted to give huge props.
The sympathy and sorrow of the Uber
The
delivery.
Uber Eats driver is my favorite character. But I also appreciate that they were getting food. Thank
Yes.
you for feeding this proposal team, whoever did that. Uh, I'm mind boggled at a company who would think this sounds like a massive, massive federal undertaking. And for those of you who don't know, and I'm not an expert, but my understanding of federal from the ones that I have done is that they don't really surprise you.
No, I don't think they.
Uh, in AEC, at least, like you get like a pre-solicitation, and then there's at least like 2 or 3 steps before the actual RFP drops. Like you usually have some lead up, some time to discuss these things. Even when the RFP comes out, you usually have a little bit of time to figure out your strategy, your ducks in a row.
My
So I
guess would
cannot
my guess
imagine
would be the teaming arrangement fell apart and they decided to still pursue. That's what I
that would make
between the
sense.
lines. I don't know. I could be completely wrong about that, but I've seen that happen too many times to count and have had similar bad experiences. So
That makes okay. The way they wrote that with no choice but to be the lead, that makes so much sense. Like maybe they were a sub and they were expecting to just give quals. That makes more sense. I'm so sorry to this team then,
yeah, that's
uh, for
to
being put in that
if you can just
position.
figure that out, wave your magic wand and figure out how to do that all if you've never done it before. Um,
They're insane, insane. Federal RFPs will like on page 4 tell you to refer to page 70 and then refer you back to like 700 different RFIs that you have to reconcile that talk in between each other. This would
Want to know if
be,
they won.
I know, I really want to know if they won.
If
I
they
need a
did, I
follow-up.
think that's amazing.
Yes. Yes. I hope that they have fully recovered from this is my number one hope. But number two is yes, that they won this thing. And also the PM who berated them for real work. Where do they think the real work comes from? Like,
I don't think we think about that very often.
I understand client work is most important and it comes first. I'm not trying to take you away from that, but I am trying to make sure that you have real work next
Going
year
forward, yeah,
and the year after.
right.
So don't yell at me for trying to keep you employed. This is just a heads up to all of our technical
Not
listeners,
understanding each other, something
right?
else we talk about all the time.
Yep, miscommunication. Man,
I'm
these
curious
are
also how long their sleep was for.
right. The like follow-up horror to this one, I'm deeply concerned that they had to go back to work that day. So they, maybe slept a few hours and then we're back in the office by like noon or something. I really hope that they got the whole day and maybe the rest of the week, honestly, to
Yeah,
recover from this.
yeah, that's so much work.
That is wild. Absolutely wild.
What do you
Proposal assistant, take care of yourself.
Yeah, what do you think? I mean, between the four, I think there are some common themes. What do you see?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Uh, I feel like there is that slow boiling, you know, things leading up to a snapping point. I'm also seeing a lot of resource mismanagement in all of these situations, whether that's like the staffing human resources or the like what's available to you to get your job done, I suspect is maybe an issue here. Oh yeah.
I think the big thing I took away was, and for most of them, I don't know so much from this last one because the story ended at the sleep. Um,
Good for them.
but I think no matter how bad a situation is, and in the moment, situations can really suck. I think
Right.
most of the stories we read, there was hope coming out of this bad situation, right? And so I think even if you're in a bad situation, just knowing that there's hope for something better, right? Once we've lost hope, it can become really dark and really hard to pull ourselves out of it. But I think just having that hope is really important for people to try to find something new or, even work through the situation they're in or whatever, right? But when we've lost hope, we're in trouble.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I went negative, you went positive. I like it. But yeah, you're right. At almost the end of every single one of these, there was this like nice little, I'm doing okay now,
Yeah.
which I think is great. These
Yeah, I
people
mean, but
pulled out of their burnout.
this month or last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, and I did a workshop for electrical contractors because they have uh, one of the highest suicide rates in our industry, and so we were just kind of talking about the path that people walk towards that and some of the steps along the way. And it goes from stress to burnout to anxiety to depression to hopelessness and then suicide. So that hopelessness is a very close step.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Again, we are nothing if not resilient. Our horror story listeners are extremely resilient.
Yeah, and I think these fear-based behaviors, right, that people are displaying in these stories, of sticking it out, of people pleasing, of trying to push through it, we get praise for it, and that makes it really hard to see the negative impacts that that's having on us because you know, we get advanced in our career, we get more money, we get praise, we get acknowledgement and appreciation, and Those can be really seductive things. Even even if our
But at
job is
what
taking a
cost?
terrible toll on our health.
Yes. Yeah, our culture is a little bit backwards in that this glorifying these almost dangerous situations. We
Yeah.
we need to not do that. We should reward good work, but we should not celebrate the almost killing yourself to get the job done.
Yeah, I mean, even just coming into this episode, I was thinking of some things that really bother me, and one of them was that success in this industry has to mean, what that means to other areas of our life. I've seen people who are, I've worked for or worked with that are, I would consider them highly successful, but the negative impacts of that are pretty high.
Yeah,
So I think
that's a
that's without the negative side effects, but you have to be pretty mindful about it.
yeah, I think it's a balancing act that I don't know if I could balance it if my life was a little bit different. Like, I don't know if I could balance what I do now and have a family. It would be impossible for me.
Well,
Uh, what?
I know you could.
Yeah, I'd definitely have to make some changes.
Yeah, you would have to make changes, but it's possible.
I could not run multiple businesses and do all of the insane stuff that I do because why not? But I think it would be a priority shift and I'd have to be really thoughtful about it. So I just am a weird outlier and I always think it's absolutely amazing uh, to people who can balance that success and also like showing up the way they want to in their personal life.
Just have to work at it, and you have to know what's important to you.
Yeah, core values.
Yeah. Well, that was our scary Halloween episode of Burnout Banter. Are you all
You
terrified?
all I'm terrified.
Me
I
too.
will have nightmares.
Um, so a friendly reminder to our listeners, if you have a burning question, you can always email it to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com. If you want to send us more scary stories, I think we would like to do this every year, so we can start compiling them now.
Absolutely.
But please remember to like or subscribe to the podcast on Amazon, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you listen to make sure you never miss an episode. If you want to play a fun Halloween game, I would highly suggest that you reach out to Rachelle because I think she has
Oh,
a fun Halloween game that she's promoting.
thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Rochelle created a social deduction horror game. It's not really scary, but if you enjoy games like Werewolf and Among Us, where you have to figure out who among your friend group is the outlier, then you're gonna really like Dead Man's Dinner Party. So, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah. And we are going on our holiday break, so we will be back with season 3 in January after this episode. But if you need us in the meantime, reach out to us at burnoutbanter@gmail.com or hit us up on LinkedIn. And
Absolutely.
we hope everybody has a great Halloween. Hopefully, not with too many more scary burnout stories. And a happy holiday.
Take care of yourselves during the holiday burnout season. We're here for you, always.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Bye, friends.
Bye.